Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. And today we're going to get into key concept 1.2 developments in the Dar al Islam from circa 1200 to circa 1450. So, in the last video, we looked at the Chinese and, in particular, the Song Dynasty. You'll remember how we contextualized by looking at the map. Keep in mind that we could do the same thing for key concept 1.2 if we had to do so. Anyway, the Dar al-Islam, it means the world of Islam. The religion of Islam started from 610 to 632, which coincides with the second half of the life of Muhammad from the Quraysh clan. After he died in 632, there were lots of developments in the Muslim world, but the religion expanded very quickly. And eventually, the successors to Muhammad, who became known as the caliphs, started to create these things called the caliphates. So the caliphate is the empire of Islam. Islam at first was very clearly just a theocracy, and so the leader of the religion is also the political leader. Anyway, that takes us to culture, what is theme 2 in our class. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity and the core beliefs and practices of these religions continue to shape societies in Africa and in Asia. Islam in particular became important throughout North Africa and the Middle East with the spreading of the caliphate. The Umayyad dynasty first, but that gave way to a more Persian cultural dynasty called the Abbasid dynasty. And the Abbasid Caliphate is what takes us into this time period that we are studying in Key Concept 1.2. As we get into the 13th century, the Abbasid Caliphate is beginning to fragment, with new Islamic political entities emerging, most of those dominated by Turkic peoples. Some of the Turkic peoples we saw in the earlier videos, the Seljuks or the Mamluks or even the Ottomans. These states demonstrated continuity, innovation, and diversity. The Seljuks first. The Seljuks come from this portion of Central Asia and eventually ended up in the Middle East in 1071, where they fight in the Battle of Manzikert, and then eventually the Seljuks will be really important for their role in the Crusades. Next is the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. The Mamluks are most famous because they actually ended up fighting and successfully battling off one of the groups of the Mongols. So they are arguably the group that stops the Mongols from getting into North Africa. And then, of course, next is the Delhi Sultanate, which was led by Turkic peoples. The Delhi Sultanate saw its height underneath the Tughlaq dynasty. One of the leaders was named Muhammad Tughlaq, who, by the way, Ibn Battuta worked for a short while. Ibn Battuta, one of the most wide travelers in this entire time period. Muslim rule continued to expand to many parts of Afro-Eurasia due to military expansion, and Islam subsequently expanded through the activities of merchants, missionaries, and Sufis. Merchants usually tend to like Islam. The religion was started by a guy who was from a merchant family, Muhammad. So also the Quran a couple of times mentions like fair trade and stuff like that. And these guys are Sufis. Sufis are Islamic mystics who help to spread the religion. That takes us to technology. So keep in mind, if we were looking at China, which earlier we did, we could talk about like the Rainbow Bridge, for example, right? One of their examples of technology. Muslim states and empires encourage significant intellectual innovations and transfers. Innovations included advances in mathematics, like, for instance, those under Tusi. Tusi was a Persian polymath, philosopher, and theologian. He invented trigonometry, and in his treatise on the quadrilateral, he convinced Hulagu Khan to make an observatory for accurately observing the stars, which may have eventually ended up influencing Copernicus to come up with his heliocentric theory. Advances in literature include the writings of Aisha al-Ba'uniya, who was a Sufi mystic from Damascus, Syria. She probably composed more works in Arabic than any other woman prior to the 20th century. For example, Diwan al-Baunia, or her book of poems. Advances in medicine happened as well, especially in the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad. In the Dar al Islam, the focus in this time period was on treating the affliction as opposed to the symptoms. Compared to European medicine of the time, Europeans were far behind and didn't have anywhere near as good medical knowledge as in the Islamic world. Much of Islamic medicine was influenced by the classical Greeks and ideas about the humors. I showed you a primary source about this in class, if you'll remember. Transfers included preservation and commentaries on Greek moral and natural philosophy. Greek philosophical works were, with some exceptions, preserved throughout the Dar al-Islam. Ibn Rushd, or Averroes, created numerous commentaries on the works of Aristotle. If you wanted to go to the place in the world with the very best library before 1258, you would have gone to Baghdad, and you could have seen the House of Wisdom, which was the new collection of the world's largest number of texts that were primarily commentaries on Aristotle and mathematics and so on and so on. There were a lot of Muslim people in Andalusia, or the Iberian Peninsula, as well. Keep in mind that Andalusia is a primarily Muslim empire. When most people think of like medieval Europe, they probably tend to think of like feudalism and the Frankish Empire or the Holy Roman Empire. But if you wanted to go to the largest, most populated city in Europe in this time period, you wouldn't even go to a Christian area. You would go to this city here in what is currently Spain called Cordoba, where there were a lot of interactions between Muslim people and Christian people and Jewish people. And there was a lot of gorgeous architecture, like, for instance, this architecture from the great mosque at Cordoba. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Key Concept 1.2. I'll see you in the next video.